I've got a box from Daniel Smith, which I've been holding off on opening because I was just too busy doing other paintings, and more colors would just confuse matters and make the paintings take even longer, because then I'd have more options, and you know how that goes. Watercolor artists and our colors, our pigments. So this is a box from Daniel Smith that I got, and I have a whole bunch of new purpley blue colors. Of course, what always happens is I start working on a painting and I realize I need a particularly vibrant shade of something that I don't have yet. And so I go online and I buy up every single one that I think might potentially be the right color, the Mr. Right of watercolor pigments. And then, of course, since it takes about 3 to 5 days for the package to get here, I continue my painting, and by the time the package arrives, my painting is done. But I still have colors to play with now, so I'm going to see what these are like, because maybe I'll use them for the next painting now. What I've got here now are 5 different colors, various tones of purple over to cobalt blue. This is just because I needed a replacement cobalt blue because I was nearly out. But these other ones, cobalt violet, rose of ultramarine imperial purple, and carbazole violet. These, I acquired them because one of the really frustrating things for me, especially when painting botanical subject matter, is getting this really intense, vibrant, bluish purple tone. You see it fairly often in nature, and it's very hard to replicate in paint. At least that's been my experience so far. I just usually can't get that electric intensity that it has in real life. And while the painting might look good when you see it by itself, and someone who never saw the original subject matter would never be able to tell, it frustrates me to no end when I'm actually painting in the process. And I'm just trying to get that, capture that glow, that electric blue that has, and I'm never able to achieve it. And it's kind of this tone that hovers between purple, blue. Let's see if any of these are going to accomplish what I desire. All right, so I have them in this order on my palette. And it's just a little test squeeze of each one right now so that I can give them a try and see how they look, because I haven't yet had a chance to try these on paper. All right, so let's just see how they look, first of all, by themselves. This first one is cobalt violet. It's a really nice, lovely pinkish tone. Again, this is another one of those tones actually that I have a tough time finding. Just that right shade of, how to describe it, a neutral pink, one that isn't too purple and isn't too red. Because you can accomplish those two ends of the spectrum easily by watering down red or blue paint, because that's how watercolors work. Just dilute stuff and you get the lighter version of it. So generally that works, but there are times when I'm just trying to get the right tone and I can't achieve it by doing that. All right, so that one is cobalt violet. Let's see how Rose of Ultramarine looks. Ooh. This is a nice reddish purple. I'm going to drop in some more pigment on this end and see what happens with it, because a lot of times with Daniel Smith pigments you get nice separation and granulation, and I don't remember if any of these are granulating ones. It's something that you can easily look up on the Daniel Smith website, but right now, not interested in looking online, just interested in seeing what they look like in action. This one is Imperial Purple. Ooh, this has promise. Look at that deep bluish tone that it has in the intense areas. I love this very dark. Oh, that is perfect. That is a gorgeous purple. Gonna add a little bit more water there and see what happens if it separates and granulates. And what do I have next? Next up is Carbazole Violet. Oh wait, I mixed those up. This was already Carbazole, so let's see which one I missed. Imperial Purple, I think, was the one I didn't try. And this is also a very promising color. It's much more of a very middle of the road purple. I like this dark one over here because it's got a very intense bluish tone to it. And let's see how Daniel Smith Cobalt Blue looks. I think this is the first time I've had the Daniel Smith brand. Prior to this, I was finishing up a Winsor & Newton tube that I had. That's beautiful cobalt blue. Let's see if it has any difference from the Winsor & Newton version, which is what I have in my other little dish over here. So the answer is there's a slight difference in tones. The Daniel Smith one has a bit more of an ultramarine blue cast to it. They're very close, but definitely is some little bit of difference in them. Let's see now what happens when I mix a couple of these. Oh, and this is interesting now as the colors are drying. This is the rose of ultramarine, and I'm getting some separation of the rose tones and the ultramarine blue. That can be really interesting when used in a painting. And this one also is showing a little bit of those separating qualities. It's not so much of the rosy tones, but it has those deep purples separating from the ultramarine blue again, so that there's some little bit of granulation and texture in there. This is the fun part with a lot of the Daniel Smith pigments. A lot of them have these granulating qualities and separations, and you can get some really neat effects out of that. I'm going to try mixing things up. Let's see what happens if I mix. Let's see. The separating ones are going to be where you have interesting things happen with mixtures. But I'm going to see what happens when I mix Bloodstone, which is another pigment that I have in the past. It's this one over here. It's kind of a brownish toned neutral gray pigment, but it's a very heavily granulating one. So I'm going to see what happens if I take a little bit of that and mix it with the Rose of Ultramarine, just for fun, because I squeezed out a lot of the Rose of Ultramarine. Let's see if we get any interesting granulation with this drying. And at this point, we just gotta let things dry. You can already see here, as I was talking about, there's some interesting granulating happening, or separation. And over here in this one too. You see these these little splotches over here. That's caused by separation of the pigment. And over here, you get a little bit of separation over here and here. And this happens when you add water. Add enough water for the pigment to flow and give it room for that to happen. So this is about 20 minutes later, and my test swatches have had a chance to dry. And as I suspected earlier, that granulation looks really, really cool over there. This is watercolor gold, at least for my style of painting and the way I work. This kind of stuff over here too, the way this separates and blooms when you add water. I love this stuff, and it gives me a lot of room to start working with textures and building up my own forms and shapes from the randomness that occurs. And this is that deep purple, bluish purple, and this is the cobalt blue. So I'm pretty pleased with these new pigments and looking forward to using them in future paintings. For now, this is what I did while I was waiting for that to dry, and now this is also going to take a little while to dry, but it was just basically dumping a lot of that pigment onto this page and seeing what happens. And again, you can see some of the granulation happening over here with the cobalt blue pulling out from the rose tones. So we'll have to see where this goes.